every day you essentially pay your dues by doing the harder thing when it's the right thing to do. Yes, we're good. Danusia, how are you?
I'm good. How are you, Dave?
Oh, it's so good to see you and hear you again. This is like the perfect timing to have a podcast number 2.
Yeah, I think so. A lot has happened since the first one.
I know, to say the least, right? Like, yeah, how have you been? How are things? How is post Tokyo right now?
Yeah, everything's good. Officially moved in with Elliot now, my fiance. So
Oh.
just sort of onto another chapter, which is a good one. So yeah, looking at all the positives of life.
I know it's been I think we had, when's the last podcast? Like 3 years ago, maybe. It was like before the pandemic. It was before
Oh,
Tokyo.
yeah. Oh my gosh, 3 years. That seems like a long time.
I know, like blink of an eye and everything goes
Yeah.
past you. But yeah, so I mean, we were just like texting back and forth, and I wanted to have you on because of so many things. I already thought you were incredible before the Olympics, and I thought you were an amazing human before this. But the last like year of your life has made me even more of a fan of you. So that's why I want to talk to you. You have so much crazy stuff that's inspirational to people.
Thank you so much. Yeah, it was a crazy week out there in Tokyo. Lots of unexpected twists and turns, but we became an Olympian, so
Yeah,
job
that's all that matters, right? I was going to introduce you like that, like the podcast intro, like Olympian Danusia Francis.
every time I hear it, I still smile.
Yeah. And before we get to the Olympics and stuff, like, man, the funny thing for me is that, like, obviously we know each other personally. And like, I saw all the media covering the bigger story with your knee and stuff. And I'm like, does anyone realize like what it took for her to get here? Like the friggin' roller coaster of the last 10 years it's been. I think that is like so beyond impressive for like what you've been through. But can you start there? Can you actually give people like a quick little recap of like the craziness from like 2012 all the way
Yeah.
now? Can you share that story? Because I think it makes your Tokyo experience even more amazing.
Yeah, so growing up, that was almost my dream, was to go to the Olympics. Seeing it when I was age 6, watching the Sydney Olympics, I had my sights on becoming an Olympian.
Mm.
So I was with Great Britain on their team in 2011, and we qualified our team to the Olympics in 2012. So that was the London Olympics, but I just fell short and was reserved, so didn't get to compete and didn't, in my eyes, get to call myself an official Olympian. But when I was in college, I kind of had this new motivation and this new way of looking at the sport and was ready to go for it one more time. So 2015, I qualified to the Olympic test event for Jamaica, but Jamaica chose a different athlete to go. So again, it was kind of a selection that didn't go my way, and I missed out just narrowly again, even though I'd performed and got the highest score for Jamaica at the World Championships. And then I never saw myself going for it again, but just something in the universe told me to go for it again. So 2019 Worlds, it was all down to me. It wasn't going to be sort of any selection due to other people. And so I just thought, okay, like it's all on me. If I go for it and I don't make it, at least I'll have no regrets. And that was kind of my mindset the whole time. But I worked really hard and did everything I could to make it happen. And then 2019, I qualified for the Olympic Games in Tokyo. Obviously, there was a pandemic, so I had to wait another year, but we got there in the end.
Yeah. And what is that like? Like, what is that like having, that's 10 years of your life, right? Where you're like, I could be moving on. I could get a job. I could do other hobbies. Like, how do you stay committed and motivated to train? Like, especially in your situation where obviously at your club, you're one of the only people who is your age and you've gone through college and stuff. Like, how do you maintain that motivation for 10 years?
I think I've been lucky that I've had sort of different chapters. So it doesn't feel like I've literally been doing the exact same thing for 10 years.
Mm.
So sort of pre-2012 was GB and training with a lot of gymnasts at my club at that time that we were all the same level. So we kept each other motivated and on track. And then after that, obviously at UCLA, was a completely different way of looking at gymnastics, and I was able to just enjoy it more, and that drove me and gave me this new spark of motivation to go for 2016. And then I think this final sort of phase was just the no regrets phase, and just I'm an adult now, it's all up to me how I want to live my life and what I want to accomplish. And so I definitely see them all quite separate, and I think if I was to look at it as a long 10-year journey from back when I was sort of 18, that would have been a struggle.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and I think like I don't know from my experience, I'm fortunate to have a lot of friends who are kind of in your position. They're a little bit like either in college or older, like trying to compete for this like level of stage. It's easier. Please correct me if I'm wrong. It's easier when you're younger and like your life is just wrapped around gymnastics. Like in 2012 for you, like you just live, sleep, breathe, eat gymnastics, and it's like your super goal. But I can imagine, or I can try to empathize that at 2016, like in the college situation, like all right, like this is a little harder to stay committed, and then I can't even imagine 4 years where you're like fully an adult and you're trying to like balance your life with work and everything else. So as you've gotten older and older, what has changed about each cycle as you're trying to approach it? Like, cause obviously, like I said, it's younger, it's easier, but now in this last one, how old were you when you first started this quad or whatever we would call this, a quint?
Um, so what, in 2016
Yeah.
would we say it started? Can't work out my age now. 22.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. So how do you go from 22 to 25 when like your friends are like, I don't know, moving on and they're doing stuff and it's like they're not committing their whole life? Is that challenging as an adult to do it?
It's definitely challenging, but I feel like I've actually always been really good at that sort of balance in life. Um, like I have my social life, my friends, obviously my fiance, and
Mm,
alongside my gymnastics, sort of planning a wedding and still getting on with life. So
yeah.
I think where it's a massive part of my life, it hasn't been just my life, which I think
Mm,
is why I'm able to keep going. Because I think when you're young, like you said, it is your entire life. Like you sort of go to school, you go to gym, and that's the routine. Whereas now it's like, oh yeah, I've got training that day, but then this day we're going to do this. And
sure.
yeah, and then obviously when it sort of gets closer to competitions and stuff, it becomes more important and more of the priority. But then I've had them down periods after big competitions where I was able to relax and just focus on living my adult life a bit more.
Yeah, for sure. And the reason I kind of asked that is because I think this Olympics was crazy, right? The average, I think, I don't remember the average age of everybody, but I want to say it was like 21 was like
Yeah,
one of the ages, which is crazy, right? If you and I had this conversation in 2012, I think the average age was like 16 or 17. So
yeah,
I'm curious about, your thoughts on that because we're seeing the trend go more and more. And like I was featured in an article where a lot of people are having a conversation about like 21 being like normal and totally okay. And especially with like, I mean, Michaela's amazing for many reasons, but to go to college, right? And then to stop and go back and make a team and medal is like mind blowing for so many
yeah.
people. I think now that we're seeing people like yourself, like Michaela, who are in their 20s doing it, it changes quite a bit what we think about from that like 14-year age on. So I don't know. Is it different now when you look back at it? Like, oh, if I knew I was going to be 27 in my Olympics, I would have changed things as I was younger. Or is it kind of you would have gone about it the same way?
Um, I don't think I would have changed anything because I just feel like I've evolved with the times and with the transitions on my life and sort of through college learned more about what's best for me as an athlete.
Mm,
But I 100% agree with you. And with that, I think the atmosphere in like training gyms and stuff that I experienced in Tokyo was just so much more team spirit in the air and camaraderie. And I
yeah,
think that's where everyone is older and it's not this sort of like control with the from the coaches or whoever the powers may be with, where they're like,
yeah.
okay, focus on you only, we're doing this, don't look at
Mhm.
anyone else, don't talk to anyone else. It was like everyone's there to support each other, everyone's proud of each other that we've lasted this extra year as well, and there was
Yeah.
just such a nice atmosphere. Everyone was so encouraging, and yeah, it was a lovely atmosphere every single day in the training gyms. Yeah, and like you said, sometimes I still think I'm like one of the only old ones, but literally in my group, one of the other girls was 28 and one of the other ones was in her 30s. And then obviously I was also in the subdivision with Michaela as well. So yeah, it's amazing. And obviously Chuso, the legend, 8 Olympic
Yeah.
time
Yeah. I wondered
now,
that.
but
Is there like an unspoken like respect sign for the people that are like 25 and older, like the like the senior citizens of the gym? Like, yeah, I know what you've been through, girl. Like I've been where you've been through.
yeah, I think there's definitely like a bit of an underlying like wink, wink, nudge, nudge, like look at us, still standing kind of thing. I think I don't know if it was in an interview or I read it somewhere where Ellie Black, someone was like, "Oh, so you're going to retire now?" And she was like, "No, like why should I?" Thing. And I
Yeah.
love that because she's doing amazing. She's still up there with the best in the world. Obviously, just came fourth on beam, and why should she retire just because she's above a certain age? So I love that from her, and I think we'll see that more and more.
Yeah. It's super inspiring for me because I think I work with so many young gymnasts that are like eyes on the prize. They just want to make a national team or a squad. They want to go to like senior elite and they want to just get running right away. And they're in like their 14, 15 years. And they can't see that far down the road about like you and Ellie and Michaela and people who are in their high 20s. They can't see that line. I think you guys, the reason I'm so like proud of you guys, because you have set a very different example of what it means to be a female gymnast, right? As opposed to what it used to be, which is like, you better get going fast when you're 12 because 16 is when it's going to happen. Like maybe if you make it to 18 and then like if we have band-aids to keep your injuries together and like you're mentally okay, you can go do college for fun. And like that's been the narrative for so many cycles and so many years. And I think this quad in particular has smashed that completely, that like, no, there's no reason why you can't be 26 to 20, 30, 40, 50 and keep doing your thing. And I think as like a younger generation sees that, it's very inspiring because unfortunately in our culture, as you know, until someone does it and shows it can be possible, everyone stays kind of in their same little rut. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly that. You did say 50s, but I don't know about 50s.
Yeah. Sorry, I was being maybe just adult gymnastics.
40s.
We'll take the 40s healthily. But
Yeah,
yeah, that was there were a couple like, you know, teary-eyed moments watching the games. One of them was definitely when she, you know, Oksana was like, you know, finally like this is it. And she got standing ovation. Like that was incredible to watch, you know.
yeah, definitely. I was in the arena when she did her vaults, and then literally everyone gave her a standing ovation for such a long time, and it was just so cool to see. I don't know if even with the changing culture, if many people quite make it to the Chuso years, but what an incredible athlete, and 8 Olympics. That is just unbelievable.
That's unbelievable. Yeah, whatever she is like eating or doing, we need to all she's found the fountain of youth. So we need to find that and figure it out. And on that, kind of with the hot, you said like the training hall and stuff, like what were some of the big highlights of the games? Because obviously the other thing that's tough is there's no fans, right? Like there's not people reporting on like the cool things going on. And it's just like, I don't know, how hard was that without the fans first? And also like the isolation piece I find like that was an under talked about piece. Like you're just by yourself, like in your hotel, like for most of the time. Correct me if I'm wrong, but what was that experience like with no fans and kind of having to deal with the Olympics on your own?
So with no fans, obviously it was different, but there was a really good atmosphere. It's like a really calm atmosphere as well. So yeah, not a negative thing. With a Jamaican team, so we would go and eat all meals together, or if I was in the dining hall, like you can have a conversation. It wasn't like you had to be like in a hazmat suit, kind of like don't come near me. And obviously everyone was getting tested every day, so you felt like they've been tested, that person's negative. And obviously if someone tested positive, I think that Tokyo acted very fast in getting them escorted off somewhere. So it wasn't too lonely at all. And in our apartment as well, there was a swimmer and track athletes. So I was with those girls and yeah, like I said, with my coach, and then on the buses and in the training halls, yeah, you can talk and be near the other girls as much as you want, kind of thing, because everyone has tested negative every day.
Yeah. And what's that like with the other athletes too? You mentioned that. That's so cool. It's like you like with the track athlete and swimmer, like, was it awesome seeing other people from different like areas and sports that you would never interacted with and getting their experiences?
Yeah, the girls in my apartment, we created like a really nice friendship. The girl that did judo, she was Jamaica's first ever judo player, so she's just like obviously making history. And then the swimmer, she's 5-time Olympian swimmer for Jamaica. So she's incredible. Yeah, and then the other girl that I was really friendly with, she actually just got bronze in 100-meter hurdles. So there were some pretty epic athletes that I got to be living with. Yeah, and we just were cracking up. Like one of my highlights of the whole trip was my last night. I'd done my competition and then I was going home the next day. And it was just the 4 of us, and we were just cracking jokes and just having a really good time in the apartment. And that for me is also what the Olympics is all about. Like people from all different sports sort of at the top of their game coming together and creating these relationships and friendships. So yeah, it was really cool. And just to walk around and yeah, just be amongst that level of talent and skill was just really cool.
That's crazy. And I imagine like the dining hall and stuff is also crazy too, right? Because everyone's there from like every sport. It's not even your country, but you see just like people from all over the world. Is that crazy to step back and think like you're eating? You're like, these are literally the most like athletic, fit people on the earth right now, all sitting in one room eating.
Yeah, literally. And I left the dining hall one time and saw Andy Murray. Do you know Andy Murray? Really famous tennis player. And I was like, oh my gosh, it's Andy Murray. I was like, so yeah, it's weird that you're just going about your normal things and then you just bump into people like that. And and everyone's lovely because I think everyone just has that mutual respect. Like if you made
Mm.
it to the Olympics, you can all relate to each other in some way. So even Andy, we were like going the same direction, and that was when I had my knee brace on, so he's asking me all about my knee and just how it's going, and just casually with Andy Murray. So yeah, it's just a crazy environment, and one that I'll truly always be honoured to have been a part of.
Yeah, not many people can say that. Like, yeah, I casually was chatting with Andy Murray at lunch one day,
Yeah.
just walking around, just kicking it. Yeah, it's funny too because I think, in just definitely gymnastics world, like I don't know, we get used to it, but we just know the people who like are really well known and really famous. But like we also see other sports, and you're like, wow, like that person's so incredible. But then like to see them in front of you must be like mind blowing. You're like, oh my god, that's Andy Murray, and like they're probably saying the same thing. Like, oh my god, that's Danusia Francis. Like, and you don't realize it as a person, but everybody's probably equally starstruck. As you're walking around.
Yeah, and actually, another athlete, I didn't know who it was. They asked for a picture with me, and I was like, okay. I was like, that's cool. You're used to having like young gymnastics fans asking for
Sure.
pictures, but for another athlete that's at the Olympic Games to want a picture of me, I was like, oh, that's cool.
Yeah, I feel very special right now.
Yeah.
And you mentioned the evening that you had with like your roommates and stuff. Were there other like any big like highlights that you really enjoyed? That were like highlights that people maybe didn't see behind the scenes because the camera coverage was a little. I mean, the coverage in general was a little all over the place. But what are the other like highlights of the games that you wish other people would knew it happened?
I think even though I wasn't able to compete, once I kind of done my routine, I just really enjoyed supporting the other girls. In our group, we'd obviously trained together the whole week, and we'd really had like little jokes with each other and become really good friends. So I just enjoyed cheering for them. And yeah, it does actually make me disappointed to hear that they didn't sort of show everyone, because some of the girls in my group were having really good competitions. And I mean, obviously we're with USA, so that was probably a priority for most networks. But for example, Gabby from Poland, she literally had an amazing competition, and it was her final competition. She's retired now, and her floor routine, when she finished, it was our last piece. She's just like, the emotions were pouring out of her, and hopefully someone captured it, because that moment and seeing her and her coach hug, and they were both tearing up, just things like that were just like so special. And then when you put that into the perspective that you're at the Olympic Games, it just makes it even more special. So just to kind of be a part of that, I say especially Gabby's sort of Olympic journey, she works so hard in the gym every day. So for her to have this almost flawless competition and then to find out it was her last one was really
Yeah.
special.
Yeah, it was the way that it worked out, at least in the US, I'm not sure international viewers, but we had like coverage of like, USA's coverage, then we had like primetime coverage where they would repeat everything. So if you watch the live showing, you have to wake up like 4 a.m. for it for the time difference. You did see a lot more of routines and stuff. And John Rothsberger and Bridget, John Rothsberger, I just butchered his name, sorry, John, and Bridget were covering that. And so they were a little bit more, I guess, well-rounded. They covered a lot of the entire arena when it was happening. But then the primetime coverage was brutal, man. It was like you literally saw like 8 seconds of like a gymnastics like event or routine, and then they would cut to like fencing. They'd cut to wrestling, which I guess some people want that. But as a fan of gymnastics, it was frustrating with the coverage because, yeah, like you said, I want to see everyone. I want to see all the top people from all around. And I also want to see like the people from the US, obviously. But there's so many incredible stories of people, like you just said, who are their whole life is dedicated to this. And then they finally like, have the moment of their life, and you want to see that. But also, I think that it gives more respect because like when you see the brevity of how hard everybody is like training and gymnastics wise, like I was blown away with like some of the ring finalists for like the guys. I'm not sure if you saw any of like the men's competitions, but like my goodness, man, they are like insanely good. And like some of the other girls too that were competing, I was like, man, these women are incredible. Like this is mind blowing that people can do this. But yeah, it was frustrating from a user point of view just to see like 8 seconds of gymnastics.
Yeah, I think my family managed to find it where it was like live streaming each apparatus. So they kind of just followed my group around. So they got to see some of those moments. And yeah, like I said, even though it is about the medals, it's also just such a sort of prestigious event that there's just so many stories within the whole thing. So it's nice to see like underdog stories, or someone that might have gone through a lot of injuries or whatever it might be to get there. And yeah, maybe they didn't come in the top 3, but they've had the time of their lives and they've really created a special moment for themselves. So yeah, it's nice to get some of those other stories and other parts of the Olympics instead of just always like who got gold kind of thing.
Yeah. And I think, and correct me if I'm wrong again, but like in situations, I think like when there's no pandemic, you're allowed to go watch like other sports and see stuff. Like, were you guys able to follow other sports at all, or not really because of the pandemic situation?
Yeah, we weren't really. Also, while I was there, not much had started.
Sure.
I don't know if you were allowed to go to other sports, because it seemed like maybe other sports were at gymnastics
Mm.
from what I've seen since I've been home.
Mhm.
But yeah, that was something that was like a bit frustrating, I think, about the whole thing. Obviously, leaving straight away, you didn't really get the chance to see anything anyway. But yeah, when you see all these people walking around, they're like, some of them are just giants, and you're like, wow, I'd love to see them doing their sport, whether that's volleyball, basketball, it might be. And then obviously, as a Jamaican, I would have loved to have gone and seen that the athletics,
Yeah.
especially 100-meter women's final, where we came
Yes.
first, second, and third. That would have
Yeah.
been epic. Obviously,
I
I was
know.
home by then, but like a normal non-COVID Olympics, that would have been so cool. Yeah, so obviously that was something that was missing, as well as having family and friends there. It just made it that much more special.
Yeah, to experience some of their stuff. And I actually enjoy watching both coverages, like the live tracker of gymnastics, than I do like watching the primetime coverage, because I see some sports. I'm like, this is incredible. Like I've never like I watched US foil, like she was the first like foil fencer to compete for this, and she won gold too. And like she just bawled her eyes out, and her coach and her were so happy. I'm like, can you imagine seeing that live, seeing when someone's life story come out to their best moment ever? So like that,
Yeah,
I think selfishly, I would have loved, if I was there, I'd have loved to see like other sports or other countries, just to like just common respect. Like, like you
yeah,
said, if you're at the Olympics, like your whole life has been a grind.
100%. And I think you've probably seen the high jump, the two
Yeah,
guys. Oh, I loved that so much. I thought that
that was
was
amazing.
just what a moment, and just the happiness that's just pouring out of them both. Loved that.
I know. There were so many times I was watching like at like 5 in the morning or 6 in the morning, and they were covering other stuff while gymnastics was on break. And I was just like I said, like tearing up watching people like just like get so excited and so happy, because they were, and honestly, some of them didn't even podium or medal. They just like had an amazing experience. And I think a big part of this too, with the year delay, especially, is like, man, just so much emotion and so much pent
Yeah,
up. Like you've been working for so long, and then to have it get pushed back a year. Like I think people underappreciate how hard it is to be like, you're training towards a goal in like 4 years, and then like blink of an eye, it goes another year, and you're like, oh my God, I have 12 more months of this. I have to train
yeah,
for 12 more
exactly.
months. Like that's exhausting.
Yeah, it's such an emotional roller coaster with the extra year. You couldn't help but feel sorry for yourself at times, and it definitely wasn't easy. And I do think there was like an air of just gratefulness to have made it there at that point. Because obviously, in that year, some people got injured or got ill, whatever it might have been, and didn't end up being there. So I think there was a lot of stories of the year helping some people, but also you can't forget the people that missed out because of the extra year.
Yeah, it's tough. I also, along with the common camaraderie of the people who are maybe in the older age brackets, I imagine too, there's an extra kind of layer of respect and, I don't know, it's just like a camaraderie, because everybody knows they've been through that extra year. That's so trying to be like, all right, if you made it to this Olympics and you kind of hung in for another year and like got through that, like, oof, like that must be brutal. So I think that might have been another layer of like people who had like a nudge, 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 wink, wink towards each other.
Yeah, definitely. Everyone was, yeah, just grateful. You couldn't help but
Yeah.
feel it when you were there. It's like, we made it here finally. And again, just going back to the girls in my group, we just built such a friendship over the weekend. You could feel that when we just shared stories of working hard for that extra year, and not even just the ones in my group. I was also really chatting with the Australian girls, and it just hasn't been easy for anyone.
Yeah.
So yeah, we made it. We did it.
And I fear too, like I was even worried up until like the moment the opening ceremonies happened. I was like, is this really happening? Like I'm worried
Yeah,
they're gonna call this like last second, like send everyone home because of a new like problem that pops up. So
yeah.
my heart was like racing, because obviously some of my friends are there, including you. And it's like, please goodness, don't let them go home. Let it
Yeah.
happen.
I remember literally walking through the dining hall and seeing a tweet saying it was getting cancelled. I was like, that's strange. I am here. I was like, surely not. There's like thousands of people here already. Like, it can't be.
Yeah. Somebody please don't tell us that it's ending, because we're enjoying this right now.
Yeah.
And on the popular stories, I mean, obviously you unfortunately had a situation with your knee and all that. And I held my breath hoping that it wasn't the worst of the situation, but can you, this is what the most frustrating points is, we'll talk about Simone later, but like the media's perception of what's happening and how quick people are to jump to conclusions. I was like, let's wait till the full story comes out and know, but what happened with the knee and like the whole situation?
Yeah, I tweaked it before I went, literally like the day before, but it wasn't bad at all, wasn't swollen, nothing like that.
Yeah.
And then we had our travel day and we had another day off. So we were like, obviously keep icing it and stuff like that, and see how it goes. So then when we got to the training gyms, it was still a bit sore. So we sort of had a couple of days where we didn't do much on it. Just was in the fitness gyms, just practicing landings and just making sure it wasn't gonna be like weak or get weaker. And then was just obviously still doing bars and stuff like that. And then one day when it was feeling better, and it was like a few days before podium training, that was the day we decided, right, let's test it out. And I'd also seen videos and doctors, and they were like, yeah, there's nothing to worry about, it's fine, you can do all your skills. So yeah, I was testing it out that day, turned a few volts, just sort of like tucks just to get going, that was fine. And then bars, did my bar routine, and my coach just helped me on the landing, that was fine. And then beam, I could do like free walkover side summies, it's my takeoff leg, but something inside me was like, don't do your leaps. So that's like takeoff and landing leg, and I just like, yeah, I couldn't make myself go for those, it just didn't feel right. But then we were going to floor, and I was kind of like, it's been fine on everything that's been 2 legs, like the bar dismount and the vaults. So like built up to it and just did like a double twist, that felt fine. And then my coach spotted me on a double back, and that was fine. So then we're going to do another one, and this time I was feeling confident because I've done a few tumbles by then, and so I went a bit harder. And he said I jumped quite a lot higher, so the takeoff was fine, but when I landed, the knee collapsed in, and so that was really painful. And then kind of like that made us decide just to do bars for podium training. But still, like the next day and stuff was like kind of back to the same amount of pain as before, and I could still like hop on it and stuff like that. But we thought, let's just play it safe, just do bars for podium, and then if it's like a lot better, we can decide what we'll do for the competition. So podium training, warm up. He'd still been spotting me on my bar dismount on the other days, but I was feeling really good, and been to the fitness gym that morning and like tested it out, and it was feeling strong. And so I was like, oh, I don't need a spot on my bar dismount. This is in the warm up gym. So I do my routine to my dismount, and then it collapsed in again. And then like when I look back, I think that was the moment that I really sort of tore. Because the next day I was really sore. So even actually during podium training, I iced it straight after and took ibuprofen, and did the bar routine to sort of just to fly away to back in the podium arena. But it was the next day when it was really quite sore. But luckily they'd actually booked me in for an MRI that morning anyway, just like a precautionary thing. But timing was good but bad. Then I think that day before was when it had actually torn. So yeah, I had the MRI out there. There's a hospital in the village called the Polyclinic, and yeah, they told me the results. I was very shocked, but they were brilliant in there. Cannot fault them. All of them are like experts, I think, and really high level doctors and people that were taping it. And even the knee brace they gave me, I was stood on this special scan machine, and it's like made to measure kind of thing. So really, really good treatment. But obviously would rather have not had to have the treatment.
Yeah, exactly, right. And it's amazing. I mean, I don't know how you have such an incredible positive outlook for it, because obviously I think in most people's situation that would be devastating, right? Like their dreams coming true, and then it all kind of falls apart in front of them. So like you said, your initial reaction, you were shocked, but like, I know, were you immediately like obviously super upset, but how do you deal with that when you're there, right? Because like in the moment, it's very upsetting. But I think I know a lot of people who have a similar situation, maybe not the Olympics, but they have some huge goal and then something goes off the rails and they get hurt beforehand. And it's really hard for them to control their emotions. So how are you able to kind of work through that and not kind of fall apart?
Yeah, before we left, so a couple more days before I first hurt it when I was still at my gym, we had a control competition at the gym, and it went really well. So I was literally feeling so ready, so prepared to show sort of my best gymnastics. And then from that high point, it was kind of like in stages, just got a bit lower. And I kind of accepted like, okay, I'm just going to do bars. But then after meeting with the JOA, and they kind of told us the risks if anything goes wrong, obviously with the injury, one of the doctors was in the meeting. And then so I kind of had to accept that, okay, I'm going to become an Olympian, not in the way I thought or I wanted, but at least we're still having this opportunity, because the other option was to completely withdraw me. And so I was really happy that they didn't withdraw me, and they were allowing me to have my moment. And so, yeah, I just had to shift my mindset. I was definitely upset. That morning of the competition was when we had the meeting. So even before that, I was still thinking of doing a bar routine just to sort of a dead hang. So it was literally the morning of when I found out that all I was going to do was an upstart handstand, 2 toe-ons. So it was kind of like
absolutely crushed them. Like that execution score was phenomenal. I think you have a world record.
Yeah, I think so, on bars anyway. So yeah, and it was actually talking to a lot of the other gymnasts when I got to the arena and like telling them, oh, I'm only doing this, and kind of I was like down about it, but they were like, well, the hard part was getting to this point, and you've done that, and whatever you do out there, you're an Olympian. And it was a couple of different people said that in a few different ways, and it just kind of hit me, and I was like, they're right. I can either go out there and be embarrassed about my toe-ons, or I can go out there, enjoy the moment, and become an Olympian forever. So definitely had to just shift that mindset that morning and decide to be really excited about it. And and I was.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's another really cool moment that I had as I was watching the live coverage. And it was funny the way that it worked out, but I forget who for USA was going at a very similar time, but they pan over and all of the, like, it's like Simone and Michaela, and they're going crazy. They're screaming super loud. The announcer's like, well, they must be happy for blah, blah, blah's floor team. And then someone else like, no, I think Danusia just went on bars, and they were all like cheering you. So that was so cool for me to see, to watch like Team USA cheering you on during the same rotation. They were going nuts.
Yeah, it was really, really nice. I remember like getting up on the podium, and because someone had a delay in getting their score in my group, so I was last up anyway, but I think everyone else was done. So I remember like getting up there, and like most of the other gymnasts in my subdivision I'd spoken to them at some point, and most of them knew that what I was going to do. And I heard Simone cheer. She was like, come on, Noosh, like so loud. And that just already made me smile. And then afterwards I was like, okay, like, a little bit like, sorry to the judges that you have to now figure out what to give me. And then I had this massive cheer just from like all the other gymnasts and the minimal audience. It was just like such a good feeling. I just had to lap it up for a second and just try to take it in as well, and think like this is a moment and a memory that's going to be with me forever.
Yeah, I mean, that's it, right? Like, you're Olympian forever and no one can take it away from you, which is awesome.
Yeah, and like you said, and like I said before, every single time I hear it, I'm just like, oh my gosh, I did it.
Yeah, absolutely. I did it. Yeah, like you said, I think that's a really good, important takeaway message is it's not always like you have these expectations in your mind about how something's going to play out, like a big goal. And like, I don't know, for my situation, not that I ever have close to Olympics, but like every major goal or thing in my life that I wanted, nothing went according to plan. Like, it never ended up being anything like what I thought it was. So it's cool that you have that ability to kind of reframe it in your head about like, okay, maybe it wasn't the ideal, perfect situation, but like still made it, still an Olympian, still got through all the struggle and stuff. And like, that's amazing. That's really amazing.
Yeah, that's exactly it. Nothing ever goes perfectly smoothly in life. So as long as you're achieving those goals, then details are details, aren't they?
Yeah.
I said to my coach, oh, I'll show my children one day my performance. He was like, maybe just tell them that you're an Olympian. He's like, show them something from Worlds.
Yeah, just superimpose the Tokyo symbol on the video, just have it edited over.
Yeah.
Like, this is mom's amazing all-around performance.
Yeah, I was like, okay, yeah, sure.
Nobody will know. How will they know? They'll never know. Yeah, so that's cool. Is there anything else but from the games and stuff that you want to like chat about or share the experiences? Because I do think both of us wanted to kind of chat on the Simone situation a little bit, but anything else from the games that are exciting or highlights or stuff that like was really cool for you?
No, I don't think so. The food was really good.
I was gonna ask what the food situation was. I saw a lot of like, I don't know, was it you had access to anything you wanted, or did you try a bunch of like traditional foods?
Yeah, there was all different cuisines in the dining hall, so you could pretty much get whatever you wanted, and obviously that was 24 hours. And then there was also this area that was a bit smaller called casual dining, so completely separate, and that was like more traditional Japanese. And me and my coach loved that one, so we went there like most days as well. Usually like went to breakfast or brunch in the main one, and then we went to casual dining for dinner.
That's cool.
What was like a snack area in your apartment building that had these Nutella sort of sandwich things, like pre-packaged. Oh my goodness. The words got out. They were always like completely gone every single time I went to get one. So I was like, damn it, I thought not everyone knew about these.
This is my hidden secret. Yeah. I think I saw Maddie Rogers, an Olympian for USA weightlifting. I think they gave you like a wooden like little plaque that like goes in all the vending machines. Is that true?
Yeah. So it was almost like a little fob. And then it was for the Coca-Cola machine. So there was machines mainly just around the village. And then you can just get any drinks you want, which is cool. I need to see if it works now, like back in a normal machine.
Yeah. This is your ticket for life. It's like the golden ticket.
Yeah, that would be pretty epic.
Yeah. What was what did you have after like your meet when you were all said and done, like celebrating? Like what was the food that you had after?
I had kind of what I'd been having, but just more. So I've been having the sushi and the pizza. And usually I'll just have like one slice, vegan. But after I was like, yeah, I'm going in, went with the pizza. Oh, and I hadn't really had much of the ice creams. There was like a lot of ice creams freezers in the main dining hall. So I tried some of those. They were actually a little bit disappointing out of everything that I ate. There was like this pink one, yeah, and then this blue one. I wasn't keen. Maybe a bit too many additives in there or something. It tasted a bit off.
Yeah.
But, the pizza was, I didn't know Japanese could make pizza that good. It was
amazing. That's incredible. I think I heard, this is so off topic, I mean kind of, but I heard a story of the swim team, like from some year, that like the lines after the swim meets are over to McDonald's are like out the door because everybody like wants just like a burger or wants like a meal from McDonald's after. So I don't know if that was the situation there, but it's funny. You must see like as the events end for certain sports, you must see those athletes just like standing in line for like all of the food they want to eat.
Yeah, after the competition, I saw the Australian girls in the dining hall, but literally we met up by the ice cream freezer. So yeah, who's finished their meats and who hasn't, by who's at which area of the dining hall.
That's amazing. I wonder, I would do like a round robin. I would try to get like one bite of everything that I hadn't had yet, just to like have a sampler of the entire dining hall.
Yeah, that would take you a while though.
Yeah.
Worth it. I think worth it.
Yeah. Too bad you probably can't take to-go bags, right? You can't like bring stuff back to your hotel.
Probably not. Yeah, you could obviously try to wrap it up somehow. Well, there was obviously gloves that we had to put on to like pick up any of the foods and stuff. So you could put some stuff into gloves. Some into a glove.
Like a secret handbag to go. No pun intended.
Yeah, there you go. Handbag. I like it.
Yeah, so that stuff's all amazing. And I wanted to highlight all the exciting things first, but clearly I think we want to talk about the Simone situation. And I felt like an ambassador for gymnastics the moment that the situation with Simone happened, right? I got 90 text messages and 18 people at work being like, what's going on? And I don't know, I have a lot of thoughts that I do want to share, but I'm curious your thoughts first, because you have more of a perspective and more of an experience than I do. So what's your take on everything? And then I'll kind of give my hot take.
Yeah, I think obviously everyone's calling it the twisties, which she's also confirmed as what it was. And I think it is connected to mental health. But I think when you say mental health, the general public has a different perception as to what it actually is when in gymnastics. Like I would call it more of a mental block. Obviously, it's linked to mental health, and it probably happens when you're sort of stressed or things are going on in your life. Maybe it could be linked to that for sure. But it's a mental block, and it's where your brain and your body aren't in sync. And I couldn't imagine, well, I don't think anyone could imagine a worse time for it to happen than the Olympic Games, when you're picked to win 5 medals or however many it was. And I think the way she handled it, though, was just absolutely epic. Like on that team competition, she took herself out and put her pride aside and put her health and safety first and put the team first. And it was really infuriating me to see people saying she wasn't a team player and stuff like that, because she was absolutely the epitome of a team player. She sorted herself out in the back gym for a second and told whoever it was what was going on. And she was immediately back in, told the girls what was going on so they could quickly get them any events that they maybe weren't planning on doing that now they would have to. And then she was cheering for them. She was moving chalk for them. She was there for them. And you can see that from the comments they've all made, that they felt like she was supporting them all the way. So anyone that was saying that was wrong. And then I think going forward, obviously, she kind of took it day by day and decided what she could and couldn't do. And I think everyone was super glad that she was able to do beam and that she was able to come out there, do a safe dismount, and to get that medal. I think that medal is going to mean so much to her, rather than just a medal to add to the collection. Like the experience that she must have gone through over those few days, and not only was it happening just to anyone, like the amount of media, there was no way that she wouldn't have seen a lot of those negative comments, because it was just everywhere. Obviously, there was a lot of positive comments and she's addressed those and she's thanked people for those. But when you're that famous, that popular, to escape the negative ones was probably impossible. So she's so strong to have gone out there with the pressure of the world on her shoulders and pull off a flawless beam routine with an unbelievably high double pipe dismount and get that bronze. And I'm so happy that she got that medal, because after going through all of that, she more than deserved it.
Yeah, Super well said. I couldn't agree more. And I think it was interesting for me because obviously of my involvement in gymnastics and also being on like the media side of it, like the seeing exactly as it was happening as people were kind of interpreting it is there's a couple things to me that I think to the lack of empathy that speak out, but also I think it speaks to a couple larger issues. So the first is that like for me, like even as a gymnast, like nobody has any idea what's really going on. And that's the thing that's so frustrating for me is like when we were watching it live, like we don't know, is it like something wrong with her? Is it an injury? Is it something else? And so like I was so blown away by how fast, like within the hour, people were assuming, jumping to conclusions, like they were just making a statement about like what they think is going on. Like you have no idea what is going on. And like the only person who knows is Simone. And even like her coaches and Cecile and her teammates around her, like they only know and they don't even know the whole situation. So like, I don't know, I was just blown away about like people's lacking of empathy and perspective. And like, it seemed as though the people who knew the least about the situation were talking the most, like reporters who don't ever watch gymnastics were making these brash statements about what's wrong. And I was like, that was so infuriating to me because like you guys have no clue what's actually going on and you're jumping to conclusions. But the second point is like the twisties are terrifying and they're super dangerous. Like I think that's when I was trying to explain to we have a lot of like professional athletes that come to our clinic and they were like asking me and I was like, you ever get like caught under a wave at the beach and you don't know which way is up or down and you're tumbling and you're terrified? Yeah. Picture that times 1,000 and then possibly breaking your leg when you come out the other side. And everyone's like, oh, I get it now. I was like, yeah, it's very, very, very dangerous. Like, and that was for me frustrating for also was because like, don't get me wrong, other sports are hard, other sports are dangerous, but like when you're throwing a baseball, it's not like your shoulder's going to like explode if you throw a ball, right? If you don't hit a strike and you don't hit it right on the mark, it's not like your shoulder's going to absolutely implode and you're going to be injured, right? But like we know people have gotten serious injuries, especially on vault, catastrophic injuries where they become paralyzed or broken their legs. And like, I think people lack that perspective too. Like, unless you're a gymnast who's been through that, particularly at the high level, I don't think I have any shred of understanding what Simone's going through. Like, I don't think you really have a leg to stand on to criticize because you've never done it. You know what I mean? You've never been through that situation. So I don't know. Those two things were first to me, but is there anything else on those that you agree with, or do you think is different about that? Because I think the lacking perspective and empathy is the most mind blowing to me.
Yeah, 100%. I can't fully remember who it was, but I think it was another well-known athlete that said that pressure is a privilege as a sort of dig.
Yeah.
And that's a tennis player, I'm pretty sure, that said it. And I was thinking, what's the worst that can happen in tennis? What, you get hit by the ball, or I don't know, your racket breaks, like nothing that's going to endanger your life or you could become paralyzed from. So I just think, yeah, people were speaking out of turn that just have absolutely no idea. But also someone that is a high level athlete in another sport should kind of show respect. And also, like, if you aren't sure what can go wrong in gymnastics and you do want to find out more, then you could just Google it. And like you said, there's been people paralyzed and even lost their lives due to a serious injury that they've incurred doing gymnastics. And also Simone's skills, they're not even, it's not like, oh, she's getting lost in a full twist. She's getting lost in a triple twisting double back. Like, that is absolutely no joke. So I think if you're getting lost in a full twist or something, there's a danger for sure. But if you're getting lost in a triple twisting double back on a hard ground, like, that's a whole nother level. So I'm glad that she felt that she had the voice and the strength to be able to tell her team in that moment and that they listened to her. I think that speaks volumes, because they could have also said, like, no, let's at least warm up bars, or they could have pressured her into even trying another event. So it was really good to also see that she has that voice and she's respected by her coaches and her team, that they listened and they took her seriously and they allowed her to step back when her physical health was in danger, as well as obviously the mental side of things, and they understood the dangers of that.
Yeah, that was very encouraging to me, is obviously like her incredible, courage to step out in a position where she's got the weight of the world on her shoulders, but to see that cultural change where she was able to speak up and say, no, I don't feel comfortable. And somebody, like, they respected it. That was very encouraging to me, because I don't know if that would have happened 10 years ago. I don't think that would have been a situation where somebody felt comfortable. And yeah, I think the biggest thing that I think is the most frustrating is in this situation, it speaks to a problem I think we have with athletics as a whole, and particularly in gymnastics, is that I felt like on the media, on the American media side, for some people, not everybody, there's a lot of positive support, but it felt like so many people were like, if you're not winning gold first every time, all the time, it's like, it's not good enough and you get thrown to the side. Like, Simone's been incredible for the last, like, however many years she's been so dominant. And like, now the moment there's a slip up, people are so fast to jump on her. And like, I felt like she was put in like an impossible situation, right? Like that people expect you to sacrifice your physical health and get hurt or possibly seriously injured for a gold medal. Like their expectation of like that gladiator mindset that like kill yourself at all costs, no matter what, as long as you get a gold for USA. Like her options were impossible. It was like,
Yeah.
compete and get hurt, right? And then what happens? Like she gets hurt, right? And everyone's like, oh, that's a bummer. And they move on with their life. And then
Yeah.
she's stuck with this horrific injury, right? Like that's so unfair. It's like selfish of someone to ask that of her. But then also, like, what's the other options? She competes even though she's not. She has a terrible competition. They get fifth. Everybody blames Simone because it's Simone's fault. She tanked under the pressure. Or she does what she does and she pulls out for her own health, which is the right option. And they criticize her and they go, like, there's no way to win. You're either winning gold all the time, no matter what, or it's not good enough. And you get absolutely just like, chastised constantly. Like it's impossible. It's an impossible situation. That's why I felt so bad for her because of that, because there's no out. There's no possible out.
In two ways, it was like the best and the worst person for it to happen to. Best because now there's just this whole new conversation. And I think young gymnasts are going to see that and take strength from it. And hopefully if they find themselves in a competition and they've got something along the same lines as the twisties happening, then they know. Simone Biles could have won 5 medals at the Olympic Games, but she decided, no, my mind's not in the right space. I'm going to tell my coaches, my team, and take a step back. So hopefully she's empowered lots of young gymnasts and gymnasts older like me as well alike. And she's also just sort of showed the world just how tough this sport is. And hopefully brought a lot of the general public to understand more of what goes on in a gymnast's head and how hard the sport is. And then obviously I said the worst person for it to happen to because of the amount of media attention and pressure that brought to her. Because obviously I was thinking even if it happened to another one of the US gymnasts, it just wouldn't have had that same blow up effect, I don't think. I think it would have just been a few articles written about it, but kind of like that was it. I don't know. What do you think about that?
I totally agree. And I think also, I think that the situation in general is so, I mean, it just takes a crazy amount of courage for her to do that, but also is like the ripple effect. I don't think that everyone sees, like if you're in gymnastics and you understand the culture and you're in it, right? You really understand what's happened the last 4 years in particular and beyond that with our culture, you realize the magnification of how important this is. Because like you said, the ripple effect is that some teenager gymnast somewhere is going to be at a competition and her leg's going to hurt or they don't feel comfortable and they're going to say, no, I don't feel comfortable doing this. And they can speak up and do that. Where I think for so long, it's been the opposite, where it's assumed that you're just going to bury your pain and keep going. And that mental blocks are just work through it, keep going. But like, yeah, for some young girl or some young boy to see Simone do that on the world stage at the biggest moment of her life, possibly for athletics anyways, is incredibly encouraging for someone to have like a, like I said earlier, like, unfortunately in gymnastics, nothing changes all the time until they see some of their heroes do it, until they see people, doing what they want to see lived out. So I think a lot of people are going to have a positive ripple effect because of that. But like you said, also with the mass media is negative because Simone goes under so much for that. But at the same time, the mass media amplifies the real conversation, which is like, athletes are not just there for your entertainment. Like they're people, they're humans with real lives and real feelings. And they're not, like, it's selfish as a consumer of sports to just expect everyone to perform all the time, no matter what, to keep you entertained. It's like, no, these are people with lives and, they have a say in what they obviously want to do. And so for them to be able to speak up, I think it changes the narrative quite a bit, which is kind of just like, athletes at all costs should do whatever they need to do to win. And I think that again is a huge cultural piece that people don't understand is so important in gymnastics right now.
Yeah, exactly. I couldn't put it better, really, what you've just said about doing everything at all costs to win. Well, no, that's not the most important thing. And Simone's clearly demonstrated that. And also, obviously, we both gave the example of if it's happening in a competition, but even just if you get some mental block in training, now I think people are going to feel more empowered to speak up, tell their coaches what's going on. And even coaches, seeing it happen to the greatest of all time, hopefully that can give them a bit more empathy towards gymnasts when it's happening, because obviously it's frustrating for both coach and gymnast when it does happen, but they can sort of say, okay, like this happens to even the best, so we can work through this. And I think it's just really a horrible situation, but it has some silver linings for that.
Yeah, and there's an interesting comment, a positive comment that said, how the Olympics is always so incredible because obviously it brings the entire world together. It's one of the only events that brings the entire world together, but also it very often transcends sports itself into like life lessons and stuff like that. And there's so many examples of stories of people who have, done things that are impactful on the world stage. And I think this is a really big example because, as we see in gymnastics, obviously the tide shifting towards a new kind of approach to our training ideas, we also see this bigger conversation about mental health. And like you said, mental health is linked to it, but this was like a physical danger situation. This was
Yeah,
a risking. I think it's equal parts a mental health conversation with the pressure, but it's also a topic of conversation about risking yourself at all costs, right? Like, don't get me wrong. If you're an adult, if you're over 18, you're an adult and you can make your own decisions if you want to compete and train, especially with like some of the stuff that happened. But like, you need to make your own decisions. And I think previously, before this and some other examples, athletes didn't feel as though they had a choice to say something, especially if they're on a squad, right? And like that was the other thing that really pissed me off is people were like, you should have known about this, a week before, 2 weeks before. It's like, well, if you actually understood gymnastics, you would realize like blink of an eye, this happens. Like, so it's not something that Simone like knew. I mean, again, I'm assuming. And she was just
yeah,
like, oh, I'm just gonna conveniently mention it, during the team finals. Like, no, like she
yeah,
clearly wants
exactly.
to compete. And so I think the bigger transcendent piece is like athletes being able to speak up for like, no, I don't feel comfortable, or like I don't want to risk serious injury for the sake of like the team and stuff. And again, I think it's selfish by the consumer or by the media who doesn't understand that, to expect an athlete who even makes an Olympic team and is on the squad to be like, yes, break your leg for the better of the country. Please break your leg. Risk breaking your leg to getting a gold medal because America, and it's like, dude, come on. That's unbelievably, it's awful. It's inhumane to ask an athlete to do that.
Yeah, exactly. And I can 100% vouch for her because I was obviously training with her the whole week and
Yeah.
she was training perfectly the whole time. And then obviously she's also come out and said it literally happened that day in the warm up. So, yeah, and we both know from experience that the twisties or any sort of mental blocks, they literally come out of the blue. Sometimes you think it was just one turn. So then you'll be
Mm.
like, oh, it was just like a one turn. But then, like how it has been with Simone, it can then transcend onto every single skill and every single apparatus. So you just never know. It could literally be one tumble that's affected, or it could be your entire repertoire of skills.
Yeah, and I think people who didn't understand gymnastics were like, well, why can she do beam? Is she like, now she's coming back just for the attention, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, you guys have no idea. You guys have no
Yeah.
idea. I vividly remember I was Zooming with my teammates in college and stuff. We were talking about this stuff. And I remember I got the twisties really bad when I was like 14 or so, trying to learn, like go from 1.5 to double to 2.5 on floor. And I was like run to, I'm like, all right, just a layout would be a full. I was like, wait a minute, that wasn't good. And they're like, all right, just a 1.5, 1.25 to my side. Like people like really misunderstand like how brutal it is. And I think the other thing is like the twisties sound so innocent and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But I was just doing like double fulls and stuff and it was terrifying. And I almost got hurt multiple times. But have you had them too? Have you had twisties before?
Yeah, mine was similar to yours. It was like every time I went to just do a layout, I would twist.
Yeah.
And even now, like I had that one so many times growing up that then now I just don't do layouts. I just always go straight to double twist. Even
Mm.
full twist, I'm like, this is on just on tumbling. Because obviously I do a full twist off the beam. That's why it just doesn't even make sense, because you're like, yeah, I can do a layout here or I can do a layout on vault, easy. And I can do a full off the beam. But if you run into it on tumble, no, let's go straight to double twist.
Yeah.
Yeah, so for me, I just avoid it now. But obviously, if it's happening in your actual competition skills, you can't avoid it. So
Yeah, and
that's
I also think the point to drive home is so important is like other sports are dangerous. Don't get me wrong. Like in America, it was like
yeah,
everything was compared to football and baseball. Everyone's like, oh, the pressure of this and Tom Brady. And it's like, yes, but like the danger level is so high. Like it's so incredibly high. And the mistakes are catastrophic, possibly. Like the margin of error is so small, but the consequences are so high. And I think that was what most people in the mainstream media who had never that like dude, people who like don't even care about gymnastics and never cover gymnastics all of a sudden were experts. Like I'm watching like talk show radio hosts have this like hot take. I'm like, dude, you've literally never watched gymnastics in your entire life. And you can tell by the way you're talking about it. They had these like hot takes on like why she was doing it, what was wrong, and saying all these insane things about her. I'm like, dude, go try a standing backflip into a pit and let me know
yeah.
how it goes. And like then we'll keep talking after the fact.
Well, you obviously just brought up baseball and football. So it even infuriates me to be compared to a team sport, because Miss Val used to always say to us, obviously in a team sport, you can pass the ball. So if you're having a bit of a off day or whatever, you don't need to take that shot or whatever it is, you can pass the ball on. Whereas in
Mm.
gymnastics, obviously in other sports too, you're literally out there on your own. But I also spoke about tennis earlier. The dangers are just different, not as
Yep.
high risk. Obviously,
Yep.
not to take away from any other sports. They're all very impressive and you have to work really hard to get to the top. But when we're talking about dangers, gymnastics has got to be one of the most dangerous, if not the most dangerous, especially when something's going wrong.
Yeah. And I think the other point to go back to is I think the most impressive to me was the courage and the humility for her to say, this is not my day. I don't have this, whatever. But what allowed that to happen is Jordan and Grace and everybody to shine through, and Suni to have an incredible performance, right? And completely knock the doors off and get us over and do amazing. And then also, but like the other opportunities that came up because of Simone saying like, this is not my day to step back. Like that's the amount of like selflessness that has is incredible. Whereas I think in some other situations, maybe somebody would continue to try to push through that and maybe, I don't know, compromise the opportunities of other people. Like that's extremely inspiring for me to be like, the team is more important than me right now.
Yeah, and especially going back to the team competition, probably her coming out there and then giving them the pep talk allowed them to then shine and do those good performances. And she believed in them that they could get a medal without her. And then they went and proved that. So I think she was just as much of a team player and a team leader in doing that role. And obviously they pulled it off. So I think that goes to show how encouraging she was in that role.
Mm. Yeah, and I think that's the other piece too, is that was frustrating was a lot of the comments, especially like on ESPN or things that are not specific to gymnastics and social media, they would put like, Simone wins bronze, for beam or whatever, like Team USA wins silver. And they were like comments like, oh, we're celebrating silver and bronze now. I'm like, absolutely. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Like, again, the problem of like, if you're not winning gold all the time, like people think it's a failure. And it's like, dude, second in the world. Yeah,
The
pretty good.
Olympics. Yeah.
Compared to you, like being out of breath, tying your shoes. Yeah, you're not really one to speak.
Yeah, like at the Olympic Games during a pandemic. And yeah, like you said, you're at home sitting there eating your popcorn or whatever on your sofa, and you feel like you've got the right to criticize. Like, no, no.
Yeah. Especially with what we talked about before of like your 10-year journey, right? To get to the Olympics. Like most people don't dedicate anything in their life for 10 years, towards a common goal. And I think I don't know, maybe just because I know a lot of athletes and I work with a lot of athletes who are of that caliber, like I have much more empathy for them. And it's like, you have to see the human beyond just the athlete, whether it's a gymnast or not, because man, if you really knew, and this was a really good point my boss made, is that back to the point of you have no idea what's going on in someone's life, right? You never do, especially with mental health. And this, thank goodness this didn't happen in a situation, but like, what if like Simone had made a decision not to compete, or any athlete had a decision not to compete, and like everybody just completely rails apart on, right? But then like the next day they come out and say something tragic happened to a family member or something, I got awful news about something, right? And now you probably feel like a jerk because you didn't know the whole situation. So like, we have no idea. Maybe something else is going behind the scenes. And I hope nothing is wrong, but like, you never know what someone's going through. And then maybe you find out more, and you should rightfully feel like a little bit of a jerk because you jump to conclusions. And so like, again, we have no clue what's going on, and none of us can judge. None of us can criticize. All these reporters are just assuming, jumping to conclusions. Like it's completely out of line.
Yeah, and I will actually say Jamaican fans have a really, really great outlook there. Even before anything came out about my injury or before my performance, I got so many comments from Jamaican fans saying, we're proud of you for representing us. Thank you for representing us. And yeah, I just find that so lovely. And then after, when I just did my short bar routine, if you can call it a routine, same thing, just so many comments of just people being positive, like, thank you for representing us. And yeah, it's just so lovely. And I think more fans of sports need to take on that mindset. Obviously with Jamaica, it's different from the USA, where you're so competitive in the USA in every single sport. But I think everyone needs to take that step back and, like you said, understand the hard work and the dedication that it took to get there, and just congratulate people. I don't know why it's so hard.
I know. Yeah. I try to share that with people too. I'm like, man, if you take time out of your day to go into a comment section on ESPN's thing and say like, you're a quitter, blah, 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 you suck. Like, you should really reevaluate your life. Like, I'm sorry, like that your life is in such a rough spot that you feel the need to rip athletes apart in the comment section while you sit in your couch. But like, man, like, come on, like we're better than this as a society. Like, it doesn't matter, sports, not sports, whatever. Like, just be a little bit better as a human. And I do hope that whether it's Simone or anybody else on social media, athletes, like, does realize that in all the sea of negativity that's louder on social media. But yeah, there's a lot of positive support. There's a lot of people who are thankful and grateful and support you for all this in Jamaica, especially when it comes to terms to like taking a step back and putting your own health first and all that kind of stuff. Because I know far too many athletes where they take the riskier situation, they get hurt, and then the media storm goes away, and it's just like, okay, now well they're stuck with an injury, they're stuck with a lifelong injury because something happened, and it's like people don't see that, people don't see the other side of the coin.
Yeah, and that's why it did also make me so happy to see her address the positive comments that she was receiving, because it was like, okay, I'm glad she's not just sifting through the negative and getting into a hole. So yeah, I think as well, we've said it a few times, but I think the support system she's got around her in her coaches and her teammates and whoever else is really strong. They helped to get her back out there for the beam, and I think we're all grateful for that.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that definitely goes to the credit of, again, I think I see it a lot in, you know, Jade and her dad and like their coaching relationship and how positive that was and how they've been amazing to her and especially Riley, like, you know, before the Olympics, but also just the incredibly important role of coaches and support systems for people who are in that situation. Because God, I can't even imagine having to navigate that situation on your own. Can you imagine like if she had a situation where the coaches weren't as awesome and as friendly and like understanding and the team around her wasn't it and stuff like that is a nightmare. That's an absolute nightmare. So kudos to her and her support staff and her teammates for being understanding, because I mean, that's literally like, you could argue in terms of athletics, that was like when the moment you're supposed to be at your best, you have your worst possible day on a public stage when everyone's staring at you. Like that's awful. That's very, very hard to go through.
Yeah, definitely. And I think she's lucky that she landed that vault as safely as she did.
Oh my God. Yeah, absolutely. She was like looking the other way from when I interpreted it. When I was like, oh man, I know exactly what's going on there.
Yeah. God, the pure fear, and just imagine all the emotions she felt after that as well. Like she probably just thought like a few swear words.
Yeah.
Like, what do I do now, kind of thing.
The benefit of having a mask, right? You can put your mask on and let loose some cuss words.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, well, I'm glad we addressed this because again, I felt like an ambassador for gymnastics of 1,000 people, but a lot of people will listen to this and hopefully understand and hopefully share, you know, the real perspective of yourself who's a gymnast who gets it. But back to you though. So what's next on the table for you? Like what's going forward after now?
So just waiting to get surgery on my knee, and then we'll just be rehabbing it, going through all of your notes so I can get the best, strongest knee after the surgery.
Happy to help.
And then after that, I'm looking towards Commonwealth Games, but I'm also one of those people that just like takes it one thing at a time. So the knee is the focus, and then after that, I'll decide about Commonwealth Games. But when I think about it, it's in a year's time, so it's sort of end of July next year, and it's in the UK, so all my friends and family can come and watch. And and it's a games event, so hopefully it will have all the aspects of the Olympics that we missed out on. So obviously friends and family there, but also can go and watch other sports. And hopefully I can finish, well, if I decide to finish my career then, on actual gymnastics performances, which would be nice. So yeah, that's what I'm looking towards, but we'll see. I've got my wedding like only a month before that, so that's one other aspect that I'm trying to juggle and figure out the ins and outs. Might have to delay the honeymoon.
Yeah, well, you can just, this could be the start of your eight Olympic cycles like Oksana, so maybe this is the beginning for it.
There we go. I'll probably be older than her though if I did 8.
Nobody will know. It's okay. Well, Danusia, thank you as always for everything, for being an amazing human, for being an inspiration to so many people, and for taking the time to come chat a little bit.
Thank you so much, Dave, and thank you in advance for all the good rehab exercises I'm going to be passing out.
I wish I wasn't an expert in that for knowing how to rehab ACLs, but unfortunately my situation allows me. So yeah, I'm happy to help.
There's actually been so many people as well that have reached out to me with their ACLs as well. So I feel like I've got advice from loads of people, but I'll definitely be following yours for sure.
Yeah, if you need anything, just let me know.
Thank you very much. I hope you have a good rest of your day.
Yes, absolutely. You too.
Talk to you soon.